Hi, Matthew Laird here. Most people come to you to complain and to complain about various issues. I'm here actually not to, mainly. Mainly. So this
Welcome,
afternoon,
Matthew.
this afternoon, you guys had a discussion about the United Boulevard extension, and we wanted to commend you on the decision you made to stick to your guns, telling TransLink that we don't want a piecemeal project, that we don't want the floodgates to be opened into the city without anywhere for it to go. And we hope you keep sticking to your guns straight through to the new June deadline if they can't come up with a full project that you're asking for. Spending tens of millions of dollars on a project that will quickly be gridlocked, that even one member of council, I was very shocked during the open house, we had a discussion and we were saying, what do you think, 5 years till it becomes gridlocked? And he said, oh, less than that. I think the number he used was 2 years. On a project that has nowhere for it to go is a very poor use of TransLink's funds when they're already underfunded on so many other higher priority projects. And we hope this will be an opportunity to have a good community dialogue about what we want for the city and the region for transportation in the future. But, and this is where the but comes in, is this project good for New Westminster to begin with? And TransLink infrastructure investments must be focused on getting cars off the road to meet their own 2040 goals. TransLink should not be expanding capacity for vehicles while ignoring the role of transit and other modes of goods movement. TransLink needs to realize that they simply can't afford these projects, and they have much higher priorities in the region, including the completion of the Evergreen Line and provisioning of drastically improved bus service in Surrey, including connections to the Expo Line. These priorities would reduce the need for projects like the UBE and North Fraser Perimeter Road through our city. And so we believe in New Westminster Environmental Partners that New Westminster, the City Council, needs to be very strong in pushing TransLink on this issue, to be a voice saying, get on with these other projects because you're going to save our city from expanded roads, expanded traffic, expanded pollution. So the other issue we want to bring up, and we've said this publicly in a few articles and press releases, is we're very much looking forward to the dialogue about the UBE and the North Fraser Perimeter Road. We really want to see how it is going to fit in the downtown region. We keep hearing for years about plinths and encapsulation, but when you actually go walk down there and see what it looks like, see the pinch points with issues like, well, for example, this was brought to us by the head of the BIA downtown, between the railway tracks and the keg, how on earth are you going to fit 4 lanes there? So before we continue talking about this, spending staff time in dialogue with TransLink over a project that may not even be possible, let's figure out how it's going to fit and if we even want it in New Westminster. So we want to say, please, plan first, then build. The idea of pushing a project forward to meet an arbitrary budgetary timeline makes little fiscal sense during this time of fiscal prudence when we already are growing our debts at all levels, including the federal government, which is bringing forward the $65 million. Why push forward and spend this money just because we can? 2011 is the year New Westminster is updating its master transportation plan. So let's have this discussion about what we want to do to develop a livable, family-friendly city before any shovels go on the ground for a multi-million-dollar project, and for what you've asked for from TransLink, $1 billion project on this potentially ill-conceived project. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have a couple speakers, sir. Councillor McAvoy.
Thank you, Matthew, for raising this issue and for talking publicly about the motion we adopted this afternoon. I know that you and I have also talked about the Patala Bridge and the potential future of the Patala Bridge, so I think you'll be glad to know that the Patala Bridge is mentioned in the motion, and it'll be read out later on tonight when we vote on it. But we talked about this issue, and I think the council has been consistent, and I'm certainly concerned that if we increase the flow of traffic, improve the flow of traffic, that we don't wind up just also doing something that generates more traffic than that improved flow can handle at the end of the day. And I think it's a pretty big issue, and I think we need to link those issues together. And TransLink committed to us this afternoon that although there will be no decision on Patella Bridge while there will be no decision on the Patella Bridge while the public consultation on the UBE is going on, they did commit to us that they will consult the public about the different impacts on the UBE, including the different scenarios they're looking at for the Patella Bridge. So that'll be part of the discussion. So we're moving TransLink towards what I hope will be a more holistic approach and a holistic discussion, which what they keep throwing back at us as well. We don't have the money to do what you want, right? And I think that, I mean, we've all had times when we've had lots of money in our pocket and used it well and used it badly. And I think that we want to be pretty sure that, we don't just keep our eye on that grant from the federal government, that we keep our eye on the prize. And the prize is improvement to what is a difficult traffic situation in New Westminster.
Thank you.
So thank you.
And Councillor McIntosh, please.
Thank you. We had a very thorough discussion this afternoon with the engineer involved, and we have to keep our minds open that we have a very significant industrial area in the area, in Sapperton, that gives us great tax dollars, and they're at a choke point. Many of the renters and the landowners are looking for the city to do some problem solving so that they can move their goods out of there. Now, that doesn't mean that we need to have a North Fraser perimeter route. Mm-hmm. And I'm beginning to think, and we talked about getting this traffic back into Coquitlam. We asked questions like, is it going to be that little one-lane Bailey Bridge? Are you going to look at all options for a 2-lane, a 4-lane, and feasibility of that type of structure, rather than just saying it's going to be a 4-lane? Because if it goes 2 lanes, that'll help move in and out of our industrial area. This money coming from the feds is basically a railway issue. That, again, at Braid Street, often the railways are multiple, back and forth, shut down the access into our industrial site. So that's where a lot of the money is targeted, is to get a safe railway passage. Now, usually it's not at a level crossing, right? It's got to be something up and over. And Councillor Osterman earlier today said we were on the council that thought a T overpass once upon a time, more than 10 years ago, may have been an option. But now Coquitlam has other routes. They have the King Edward interchange. So we're saying to TransLink, look at other options. We don't even have to stay within Sapperton. And maybe, for this swoop or whatever, if the South Fraser Perimeter Road is successful, couldn't we just keep saying use that road rather than coming to a North Fraser Perimeter? So TransLink, like I said, the engineer was totally open. It was an open meeting today with the studies that they're going to do to look at all of the different initiatives that could be done and different ways of doing it. So that's what I see we accomplished, and maybe we don't even have to talk about a North Fraser Perimeter Road in the future.
Maybe. If I may, there's actually a logical fallacy in TransLink's argument. I agree that our industrial area in Sapperton needs access to get their goods in and out.
Yeah.
But right now they're choked because of the traffic flowing through trying to get to that Bailey Bridge and the choke point that exists because of the Bailey Bridge.
Yeah.
And if you were to build, even if you were to build a 4-lane UBE over top to create access, as I said in this discussion with Councillor Osterman about a month and a half ago, if it's choked, if that 4-lane overpass is choked again in less than 5 years, well then the businesses down there will be choked yet again. They still won't be able to get access. It's all about the choking of traffic trying to go through the business area, which is causing the businesses not to be able to get their goods in and out. And that's what we need to really question is, do we want traffic flowing through the Sapperton industrial area, which is actually not going to be good for our businesses.
Right.
Because it's going to be through traffic rather than access for our businesses, our tax base.
And all that came up today, that TransLink is going to look at different scenarios, which I felt was extremely positive, to look at a variety of scenarios, not just it's going to be this or that. And they're going to do different studies, and then once they've done that, it'll be, more consultation with the community. I felt we had a very productive conversation with the engineer today.
That sounds like a good meeting.
Yeah,
Yes. Yeah.
thank you.
Good, thank you very much. Councillor Harper?
Thank you, Matthew, and for bringing this up again. This is as complex as the discussion we had around taxes just previously, because there's a number of things going on. Number one is there's not one answer, and there's not one goal, right? There's many goals, and everybody in this council doesn't have the same opinion, right? And everybody in the community doesn't have the same opinion either, right? And we saw that in the public consultation. It was, I wouldn't say it was all over the place, but there was a number of different opinions. So one of the first questions I think you have to answer is, does the issue of truck traffic, and I'm going to stick to truck traffic, have to be addressed in the city? And Councillor McIntosh has addressed that to some extent in her presentation to you. So that's the first question, or just leave it like it is, right? And my view is at this particular moment, I think it has to be addressed some way, right? I'm not 100% convinced exactly how this should be addressed. Number two is, the thing that we've said in this council where we are united on is the mitigation issues. Has to be mitigated. Our neighborhoods have to be mitigated in the sense that we don't get the penetration of traffic off of United Boulevard, off of, the North Fraser Prim Road into our neighborhoods. I mean, that's a disaster, right? It's going on now. Continually, traffic is flowing up through the city to the tune of about 500,000 cars a day in terms of trips. So this is a long-standing issue. The other one is the issue of Braid Street, and I think you've addressed that quite clearly, because we've had a strategy here of trying to address our industrial commercial tax base to provide the kind of services, to get the kind of taxation revenue, which some of the people have spoken tonight in terms of our tax increases and dealing with that. If we hadn't lost huge chunks of our industrial tax base, we wouldn't be paying the kind of taxes that we have been in the last number of years. And hopefully we can mitigate that by dealing with the issue of taxes in the industrial area of Braid Street. So that's really important. But I think the other issue is, and I think it's something that really hasn't been addressed, right, is that those trucks, you can't take a truck driver out of a truck and put him onto a SkyTrain, put him or her onto a SkyTrain, pardon me. But the truck, right? But what you can do is you can put passenger vehicles and passenger riders, onto SkyTrains and eliminate. And I fully support that. And I think everybody on this council fully supports that. And everything we've done is said, look, you should be doing the Evergreen Line. You should be this extension to Langley. All those kind of issues should be addressed. And hopefully some of those issues would actually try to lessen the traffic on the North Fraser Perimeter Road. Although the number of cars that are increasing on our streets year over year, I doubt it. Right. So it's very complex, and plus the South Fraser Perimeter Road will I think ease it somewhat, but I think the issue for us is to try to get the truck traffic through the city, to mitigate our neighborhoods, to address the issues of Front Street, because I think that's really important, and recapture our waterfront. So it's not just about how many cars are going back and forth and how many trucks are going back and forth. So the issue of the funding, which is now $65 million, and TransLink is putting in a like amount, and somebody's got to make up some more in order to do this UBE. The question is, how long will we have to wait for these kind of opportunities to reappear? 10 years? 20 years? And so we have a responsibility to take a look at this and take a look at it and see if it can be addressed, right, in a reasonable, responsible way. So this city can live with it, so we can live with it. And I think this resolution does that, right? Because we're prepared to look at it until May or June or whatever that timeline is that they've laid out. And if they can come up with something, then perhaps we'll be entertaining that idea. If they can't, then we may be waiting to 10 or 20 years in order to make these improvements again. Because all this money's got to come from the federal or provincial government, because our tax base just simply won't pay for it. So that's sort of I think that's the position that I'm taking. I think most people in council sort of agree with that general overall approach. So.
Well, this is what I meant by the larger dialogue about
Yeah.
transportation in our city and our region. And you mentioned about truck traffic. When it comes to this particular route, TransLink keeps saying it's a truck route, it's a truck route. But they won't commit to saying, okay, only trucks are allowed. And so it'll just be clogged with commuters. And as for the money, well, what you're asking for the mitigation, that's going to be a larger, much larger number than this $165 million. And you're absolutely right about getting the cars off the road so that the trucks can move freely. And our outgoing premier, who is certainly not going to go down as a mass transit investor after the Gateway project, even said SkyTrain is equivalent to 10 lanes of freeway if it is fully utilized. So we have all this unused capacity we could be using to get those cars out if we actually allocate the money correctly. And TransLink 65 million, if they could allocate it correctly, if we could have a frank dialogue and say, you will get your trucks moving better by letting us move the 65 million to actually getting the Evergreen line done so there are less cars so the trucks can move. I mean, it's a shell game. It is a shell game. It is a complicated issue, but that's where we're coming from. So,
Yeah.
we're
Yeah, and the other issue
sort
is,
of, our Venn diagram sort of touches a bit.
one of the other issues that was raised today was the issue of nighttime truck traffic, forcing trucks to drive on, not Fraser Perimeter, but another designated truck routes at times of the day when regular passenger cars aren't on them. They can move quicker, they can go through, there's less pollution, but
But the
The
people
reason-
living in the interurban, as those trucks go past at 3 a.m.
well, if they're on truck routes, it should be, I would think it would be probably okay in most instances. We don't want it up on 8th Avenue. And
No, I'm talking the
Avenue.
interurban, like the building, the Salvation Army building, exactly where Front Street is.
Yeah, right.
I don't think they would appreciate 3 a.m. But you're right about having the dialogue. Just we have to be very careful on where we go with that dialogue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you very much, Councillor Osterman.
Thank you, Worship. Matthew, thank you for coming. Thanks for sharing your insights. You're absolutely right. If you go to Columbia Square, it's just absolutely untenable how people come around the corner. You're coming out of Columbia Square at the IGA, and at the right time, you can't even merge with the traffic to go towards the West End or the East End. It's impossible. But there's something else that's happening in our city. We saw it last week in council. We see it in numerous emails. There is now such a significant resident rage at traffic, at speeding, at risk. It's absolutely, our town is on the cusp of just literally boiling over because people have just had it. And I don't know how much we're going to do on the monkeying around with the North Fraser Perimeter Road when I see that what we've done at 20th Street really hasn't helped. It's made a minor improvement to flow stuff. I came from the airport to come to council today. I stopped dead somewhere in 91. 3/4 of an hour later, I made it. One truck broke down. One truck, 240-foot lumber carriers, and there's no mechanism to fix this truck or tow it. So the whole thing ground to a complete stop for 3/4 of an hour. Everybody drove a mile an hour. Just symptomatic of how this needs a lot of work. Interesting enough, I'm working with my staff members in our company. They're looking for a good, affordable place to live. Access to BCIT, access to Simon Fraser, access to colleges. And ironically, we helped plot it out in communities. Guess where we ended up?
New Westminster,
New
nice and
Westminster.
central. Yes.
Good quality rents, good parks, good library, right in the center of town, people of modest incomes. This is the perfect place
The
to
most
live in.
SkyTrain stations per capita, which is a big
Absolutely.
selling point for me.
When I showed this to a couple of my staff members, they said, wow, what's the downside? And I said, well, the downside if you get caught in the traffic patterns. And I believe you're right. We need to look at the big picture. I raised the issue today about Burnaby. We've let Burnaby lie in the weeds. They have their long-range plan. Let's finally get this entire thing out on the table, because a couple of weeks ago, my wife and I drove through Fraser Valley. Heaven forbid. I never saw such a mess in my life. Now, it used to be the #1 highway, and it is it is just, you can't believe it is just so chaotic. And that's symptomatic of the future, 8 lanes, unbelievable. And I think we're on the cusp now, as Europe has been on the cusp 100 years ago. And in Europe, they had to rationalize to mass transit, to subway systems, to train systems, to bicycles. And eventually a balance was created in England or in Portugal, in Holland. Holland's my favorite examples. But I honestly believe you're quite right, is that we've got to look at this thing, we've got to make gains where we can. And there's not an easy fix to this one at all. It's
No,
going
it is
to
a
take
complicated
lot
issue.
of good, clear thinking.
I think back, whenever I think about these issues, to Seattle, and my entire life, whenever we've gone down on family trips for now 33 years, whenever I've been down there, I-5 has always, every single time, been under some sort of expansion,
Yeah.
construction at some point, and it's always been gridlocked. For 30 years, they've been expanding that freeway, and they've never been able to ungridlock it. And so we really have to ask, are we willing to go down that same road of spending billions and billions, or are we going to think bigger, going to think different, going to think about how we can invest differently and change the way we move in the Lower Mainland? Even things like short sea shipping. I don't know if you've ever seen the ports report that came out a few years ago saying, great idea, let's do it. But there's just no higher level body which has the mandate to look at all this. You have TransLink, they're not allowed to look at short sea shipping. You have the railways, which they have their own agendas, and there's no higher level organization looking at this. And this is not blaming you guys, this is beyond your mandate as well, but this is something we need to really push and get happening, so we have this dialogue about what we want to see happen over the next 30 or 40 years in our region.
So
Thank-
come on back and stay tuned.
Thank you very much, and Councillor Cote.
Well, thank you, Matthew, for coming down and talking on the issue. Certainly, this has been a hot topic around the council table for a number of months and in the community. I agree with you. I think we need to take that larger look at transportation. Major road projects have time and time again shown that they don't reduce congestion, and they just create more problems and lead to need for greater expansion. So I think, given especially in the coming years, we're going to face challenges with climate change, with peak oil, and these things are going to have an impact. And I think we've got to start filtering these kind of ideas in our discussion at every major road project that we're looking at. Now, today, TransLink came, and it was, I thought, a very good discussion. There was, definitely some openness to talk about different issues that we haven't talked about in the past. Just to speak to the motion tonight, I didn't support the motion, not because I'm actually really against anything in the motion, but just simply because it is separated from the Patella project. The TransLink advised that unfortunately, due to other constraints beyond their control, won't really be able to come out into the public until probably the fall, but that they need a decision on the United Boulevard extension by June. And unfortunately, to me, that doesn't work. Those decisions have to be done hand in hand, and although we may be getting analysis to what the different impacts of the Patella project would have to be, I think those decisions need to actually be made together, and that's my problem with moving ahead with this consultation process at this point, is that council is going to be forced to make a decision in June, knowing that a decision about the Patella Bridge is coming in the fall, and we don't know what really what's going to happen with that. So to me, I think the two are definitely connected. Having said that, I think one of the bright spots that did come from TransLink was the willingness to talk about capacity into and out of New Westminster. Before, this had always been kind of envisioned as kind of a four-way highway in and out to on Brunette, but there was a discussion about looking at reducing the capacity to a two-lane road, and I think this would address many of the neighborhood concerns. It would probably address many of their financial concerns, because finding a way to build this would be a lot more financial and could actually deal with some of the issues that New West is having and have it not impact that. And it would also address some of the overall route impacts, in that we may not be looking at the same kind of capacity issues that we might have been encouraging with what we saw in the previous design. So I do take a ray of hope that at least that's on their radar and is now a part of their discussion. And although I don't oppose kind of the work that we're asking them to do and kind of what's been good, I just think this really needs to be tied to the Patella Bridge, and it's still separated, and unfortunately they need a decision by June, and we're not going to have any serious decision about the Patella until the fall. So
And
Thank you.
Councillor Cote, I commend you for that position, that chasing the $65 million from the federal government.
Councillor Williams, please.
Yeah, I think, though, the thing that TransLink certainly is going to take home today is what you said when you first sat down, and that is that this council is committed to always reminding them that there's the whole North Fraser Perimeter Road, excuse me, that we're dealing with. And to deal with one piece without knowing, excuse me, what the rest of it is just not good enough. So it's my hope that that he'll take that message back. And we're certainly going to see, and as Councillor Cote mentioned, they are going to deal with 4 different scenarios. You know, with Patella Bridge, maybe here, maybe there, maybe there. What's the impact on the UBE? So, you know, there is hope a little bit, but I don't know. It is too big of a question right now to.
The one final message I'd like to leave with you guys is the $65 million. I mean, this money is not stimulus money, as you guys are probably aware. It is Federal Pacific Gateway money.
Mm-hmm.
And if this project really is a priority to the federal government, like they say it is for moving truck traffic and dealing with the rail issue, they'll be at the table when the time comes.
Yeah.
They'll bring the money back. I mean, the money's been on the table for how many years? When New Westminster is ready to move forward with this project,
They'll have to solve it.
they'll be here. Yeah. So don't
Don't panic.
don't push yourself to this arbitrary deadline set by the federal government. You know, hold your stand, be true to what you believe in.
Well, we
and
have so
federal
far.
government, yes, and that's
And
fantastic.
that's the
That is
point.
fantastic.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Laird. Appreciate you coming.